We are now live. Afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining. I'm here with Uncle Dave, as he's best known to the people in the trade. And today we're going to be talking about mortgages, predominantly for new builds. So, David, welcome. Glad to have you on board.
Thank you very much for having me today. Yeah, I think I got Ian to thank for that nickname, haven't I? Really, Christ. Dave Howarth.
Yeah, I don't think that's one that's going to. Yeah, I don't think that's one that's going to go away very, very quickly. So,
not living that down. No way.
It's when the clients start. That's all right. No worries. So, Dave, tell me a bit about yourself. Who is Dave Howarth, and who are AFP Mortgages?
So, AFP Mortgages, we're a firm of mortgage brokers, almost a network across the south of England. So there's 28 of us in total. Myself and my partner, Alan Sherville, have built the Wokingham branch, if you like, up to a 10-strong team now. So we've got 5 brokers in our office, a few admin, and some other clerical staff, which form our company. Mortgage and protection specialists. So we help out with all sorts of purchases, remortgages, and like we're talking about today, certainly a big part of the new build side of things as well. So yeah, happy to be involved in everything.
Fully regulated.
Fully regulated as always. Yeah, it goes without saying. You can't do what we do without our regulations and qualifications. Absolutely.
Yeah, no. So I get that, and I think what I wanted to do today was, I know there's an awful lot of interest at the moment on new builds, and especially Help to Buy with the new scheme that's now in play, and effectively really for buyers who are interested in buying a new build home, how they go around the mortgage process, and how does the mortgage process differ from buying a second-hand property. So. Does it differ? I don't think it does it?
The main difference there is the deposits, to be honest. Let's forget the Help to Buy to start with. Let's think of it as just using all your own money to buy a new property. The biggest difference is deposits. So although there are lenders that will allow you to buy a brand new house, not flat house, with a 10% deposit still, they're few and far between. You know, right now, off the top of my head, I could probably think of 3, maybe 4 banks out of the hundreds of options that we normally have that would let you do it with a 10% deposit. Most like a 15% deposit for a new build house. They go a step further with a new build flat. They often say, don't get me wrong, 15% is acceptable, but some banks will say they want 20% deposit. Why that is, it's rather an old sort of bit of policy which has never been changed, but it is the way we work at the moment. So there's those restrictions. But if you've still got a 10%, we can find a lender for you. So it's not out of the question by far. And
they're high street lenders. They're not the back street lenders, are they? They're the main guys, the main players in the market.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one that sticks in my mind at the moment is Accord Mortgages. You might not have heard of them, but they're part of the Yorkshire Building Society. So after Nationwide, they're the country's second biggest building society. So you're not talking any of these adverse lenders that are going to really penalise your interest rate. You're still probably up in the top 7 or 8 of the best interest rates available to you. So still get a good deal out of them, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I bought a new home 4 years ago, and I got a cracking deal with Virgin Money, which was it was daft not to do it, if that makes sense. It was a great deal. So they are about, and I think for somebody who is pretty green to the mortgage side of things, talking to somebody like you is the best way forward in terms of getting the best advice, knowing what's about on the high street.
I completely agree. A combination of having a reliable estate agent and a good mortgage broker, and you've got to have a good solicitor, obviously, that will just make the entire process a completely different experience. Hopefully, you get good help that you can rely on like that. It'll be very slick and very stress-free. A good mortgage broker, we will be able to pick out those deals, like you say, make sure you've got the right amount of deposit, discuss all the costs and everything else involved. And if you are struggling, we can then talk about all the different schemes, like your Help to Buy, shared ownerships and things like that, which if you go to a high street bank, they might not necessarily talk about. They'll talk about what you ask them to talk about, and that's where it stops. Whereas we won't just do that. We'll explore all the options until you get the right deal for what you're looking to achieve.
Yeah, sure. So is the lending criteria different for a new build or not?
Other than that deposit, not necessarily. Certain smaller properties, like your studio flats, for example, have certain square footage restrictions. But that's not necessarily just for a new build. It's harder when you combine that with deposits to factor in with the new builds. Not necessarily criteria. Cladding's a big one at the moment, whether that's new build or not. These properties with cladding have to be properly certified now. Not necessarily. Sometimes different interest rates marginally, but again, that's really more if you're using the Help to Buy. I think all this talk about different criteria is when you involve the Help to Buy scheme. That's when it changes things a little bit. If you're going to buy a new build property with all your own money, your own deposit or equity, you can pretty much rely on standard criteria from the banks.
Fine. Okay, cool. I've got a question. It's coming from Amit from Slough. Do lenders offer different mortgage rates on new homes?
Good question, Amit. Yeah, it's again not necessarily just for a new build, but if you did want to include that Help to Buy, that's when you might start getting slightly different deals than you would if you had a standard mortgage. So just because it's new build, not necessarily. If you're going to go down the Help to Buy road, it might be slightly different then. Yes.
Yeah, fine. And how does a buyer, somebody who's not in the industry, who's green, doesn't know anything about buying, how do they decipher what is the best mortgage for them?
That's and again, without sort of praising myself up, you've got to use a mortgage broker there, because it is an absolute minefield. Yeah. You've got access to high street banks, I don't know, 10, 15 different banks to choose from who have probably 10, 15 different products, each on offer. So to filter through everything there, you wouldn't do it if you didn't use a mortgage broker. You'd walk into your bank and get offered that very small range of products that they've got available. So talk to a broker, talk to an estate agent who can put you in touch with a broker, and they will then just have a good chat with you. We call it a fact find, but it's just a conversation to determine what you're trying to achieve, what your situation is, and then we can recommend exactly the right product for you. There'll be a selection of products you might want to choose from, and we can put all those on the table and talk through to find out what's best for that individual.
Sure. And then that fact find doesn't affect their credit search or their credit footprint, does it?
Not at all. That literally is just a chat at the start. So a conversation, be it phone, used to be face-to-face in the good old days, but that's not so easy at the moment. Or we could do Zoom calls and literally just a chat. We have the knowledge and experience of what banks can do with your income. Some might make your income stretch further than others to give you a slightly larger loan. So if your interest rate is the paramount sort of goal there to try and get yourself a good rate, we'd go to a certain different provider. Some like debts, some don't like debts, some like self-employed, some don't. So depending on your situation, and we just talk about all these different points, we could then at the end of it say, right, you are best off with NatWest, Halifax, Santander, whatever suits the bill, and start looking at the proposals they can offer that person at that point. So no credit search done at that stage. That's the next step when you go to do a decision in principle, is when that would happen. So no, very much, absolutely no downside to having that initial chat whatsoever. And it's free, which is always a good thing to point out.
Yeah, and that's free all the way through. So do you charge a client if they want to use you, if you want to do their mortgage through you?
We always try not to. We're not going to lie. We get paid a commission by the bank. It's a very similar amount for all the different lenders. We will do our best not to charge a commission, but we are a business. We have an office to run. So if the mortgage is relatively low and the percentage the bank is going to pay us is sub X amount of money, we have no choice. We have to pay the staff. We have to put food on the table. So we have to charge a small fee. But for most of the people's mortgages, Certainly, Andy, we've been doing some deals that, we've been talking about cases for the last year or so. I wouldn't want to charge any of the people we've spoken about a fee. So it has to be a really low sort of loan amount to warrant doing that. So 9 times out of 10, I would say we will not charge anything throughout the entire process.
Fine. And I think being totally transparent, am I right in saying that if you are earning a fee from the bank, you have to declare that what you're earning to the buyer? So if you say, for example, you had a Santander and a NatWest mortgage, and you were saying to the client, I would suggest you go with Santander, would you have to declare what the commission's difference would be?
Yeah, we don't have to declare it verbally up front as such. However, all of our documentation has that written on there. So one of the very first sections of a key fact illustration or a mortgage illustration has all of our costs and fees in there. So it's very transparent from the start of the process, and it's nothing we hide. We're not biased because of that. I would prefer to go to a bank that doesn't pay me as much, that's right for that particular client, And when I say doesn't pay me as much, it's probably 20 quid in it, depending on one bank and the other. So it isn't influential in any way. Yeah.
So it's not life. We're not talking life changing amounts if you went
with
one
bank
bank or another.
Unfortunately, Andy, no, very rarely.
All right, I've got another question come in from Maureen from Windsor. What fees are usually required to be paid by the buyer? Which we've just literally, I think we've just gone through. So I think to answer your question,
So overall,
I think to answer Maureen's question.
Yeah, as a brokerage, we would like to keep those fees to a minimum. Got to consider the bank's fees. They will probably charge a valuation fee. There's a lot of lenders out there that could offer a free valuation, but if you're prepared to pay a couple £100 for the bank's valuation, that'll put you in good stead. And banks have different interest rates. They have relatively low interest rates, have a product fee, or they have an option for a slightly higher rate, which doesn't have a product fee. You don't necessarily have to pay that up front. It can get added onto the mortgage, but it's a fee you might have to take into account. So as for the broker, no fee, but there are associated costs with the mortgage. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Paul from Wokingham. What documents are required for a mortgage application, and how long does it take?
Oh, Paul, wow.
Big question.
Yes, indeed. There's no straightforward answer to that, and I'm not going to be a politician and wiggle out of it. But if you're employed, you're going to need pay slips, bank statements, IDs like passports, and a fact find, probably some proof of deposit. If you're self-employed, it gets a bit more complicated with other documents from your accountant or the taxman. But it's not rocket science. All of the stuff you can get from online portals, download from your banks and stuff. I've had clients gather everything together for me within 10 minutes, and I've had other clients that take a week to get the paperwork, but it's not hard to get. The mortgage application process, well, if you'd asked me that before COVID hit and the world changed, I'd say you get a mortgage offer in a week, 10 days. Right in the heart of the lockdown, where it was very difficult to get a mortgage, you were taking a month. Now we're back to a couple of weeks. But that is all in the hands of the lender. Some lenders are faster than others. You've got to get a survey done as part of the process. So it depends on when that surveyor can get out, the availability to see the house. A lot of factors at play, but on average, a couple of weeks from start to finish.
Yeah, Paul, I think that leads on to a topic both me and you dealt with one of the transactions over at the site we've got in Slough, where we had a lady. And I think we can talk about it without saying names and what have you, but it wasn't a straightforward case. It was, she came to me, wanted to view the apartments. I put her in touch with David to make sure that all the affordability was there, which was clearly it was. Viewed the apartment. She wanted to do the reservation. Halfway through the reservation, she mentioned about documents, and I said, we're going to need your passport, blah, 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 blah. Passport had expired. We tried to look at do it with a driving license, but it needed to be a passport. And obviously this was right in the middle of lockdown. It was one of those where I think me and David both sort of scratched our heads. David more than I, because it was down to him to sort it out rather than me. But from point of reservation to doing the Help to Buy to getting her passport reapplicated, her passport
reissued,
renewed. Reissued. That's the word. We managed to get an exchange of contracts within 36 days, which was incredible. But I think that we managed to do that because we set it up right, literally from day one. The client was willing and knew what she had to do. We knew what we had to do to help her and guide her along the way. So it was one of those where it could have been an absolute nightmare, but it was actually a breeze in the end because it was set up so good.
Yeah, no, you're right. I remember that one, Andy. I think we were talking about it on a Sunday when she first came to sign that reservation agreement with you. And yeah, she said no passport, and immediately that triggered what's next. From memory, she had a provisional driving license, which unfortunately the banks can't accept. It has to be a full UK license. But yeah, between us, we sorted out the options and got it done in pretty good time, all in all, I think. Yeah, well done.
Yeah, and I think it was a pat on the back for everybody, wasn't it? Because I think it's from my point of view, because it's my company, I've got an interest and an investment in the people that are buying, not just for the completion, but because I want them to be happy when they move into their house. I want them to know that they've got the right level of service. So because it was me dealing with it, and I'm not saying I'm better than anybody else. Okay, maybe I am. But because it was me dealing with it, we knew what we were doing, and it was a case of, it wasn't just some, I don't know, some estate agents have weekend viewers and what have you, who don't know the process. Because we knew the process, we knew what we had to set up for her, and she's over the moon when she's now moved into her flat, and she's ideally it was looking at she wasn't going to be in before end of January, but now she's in for Christmas, which is what her ideal timescales were. Yeah. So I think it was a win-win all round for everybody. But I think it just goes back to the point of using a broker that knows what they're talking about, using a solicitor who understands the development, and working with the agent to get the ideal goal, which is everybody to the transaction completion date that everybody wants to work to.
Yeah, absolutely. So
it worked out really well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No,
so what about Help to Buy? Let's talk quickly about Help to Buy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was. Yeah. She still is. She still is, not past. So what about Help to Buy? How's Help to Buy? I mean, do you want me to talk about Help to Buy? Do you want me to go and see how the changes are?
So yeah, that's. I'll probably let you talk a bit more about the changes themselves, but the basics of Help to Buy, like I alluded to earlier, does change that mortgage process a little bit. I think the big sting in the tail for a lot of people is that whereas certain banks can lend you up to maybe 4 3/4, in the right situation, maybe 5 times your income as the mortgage amount. As soon as you use Help to Buy, that's limited to just a tad under 4.5 times income. So whereas you might have a decision in principle for X amount of money without using Help to Buy, that could likely come down a little bit if you want to include that scheme as part of the purchase. But no, there's been a lot of changes, hasn't there, as well, with the new Help to Buy 2, as me and you call it, Andy. So yeah, maybe you want to explain a bit about that.
Yeah, so you've got Help to Buy 1, which is the old deal, the old Help to Buy scheme now, actually, which actually finished yesterday, which was open to not just first-time buyers, but second-time buyers as well. Help to Buy 2, which is the new Help to Buy scheme, comes into effect today. So it is now only relevant to or applicable to people that are first-time buyers. Second-time buyers are no longer able to get the Help to Buy, and the affordability level has changed slightly. So in the southeast, it's gone from 600,000 down to 437,600, and in the southwest, it's gone down to 349 from 600. So the criteria has come down a little bit, so it's narrowed it down. But if you're a first-time buyer, it's still a great scheme to be looking at, because you've got nothing's changed in terms of the payments back. You've still got 5 years interest-free to start off with. You do have to pay it back. It isn't a free loan.
It's not a gift.
So you do have to pay it back. But the first 5 years, no, the first 5 years are interest free. But I think if anybody is interested in Help to Buy, then you can either contact me on my website below. You can speak to Dave, and we can talk you through the benefits of Help to Buy, because it is a benefit to a buyer to get onto the mortgage ladder. Definitely.
Yeah. No, it's a great scheme, and for all of our clients that want to use that, we would hold their hand throughout the entire process. We have access to the Help to Buy portal, so we can actually log on and submit that application on their behalf, which makes their life a lot easier, saves time as well. They do have to sign a few forms still, but again, like we've done in the past, Andy, we liaise with each other and get the reservation forms and things between us, try and keep life as easy for the customer as possible. It's a great scheme. For first-time buyers now, for those that have got the relatively small deposit, you only need a 5% deposit still of your own money, providing your income can get you the size mortgage to top the rest up. 5% is the minimum. And then the government can give you up to 20% of that house's value as that loan. So it's a good way to get you that slightly bigger house still with the small deposit. Interest-free loan for 5 years, so you don't start paying that back at all. You don't start paying it back, but you don't start paying interest on it for the first 5 years. Like you said, it is a loan, not a gift. So when you sell the house, they'll take their stake, their 20% or whatever they lent you back. But it's still a good way to get a nice size home and actually not pay a lot for it in the first few years. So great scheme. I still praise it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think it's testament to Help to Buy and the government in terms of how they've managed to, since the lockdown, because they went through a horrendous process of timescales where you were originally looking at the authority to proceed, which is the first part of getting the loan, was before COVID and lockdown was taking 3 days. 3 weeks into lockdown, when they then announced the stamp duty holiday, because they got inundated with it and because they were working from home, what have you, it went from 3 days to 5 weeks just to get an authority to proceed. So they went through about 4 to 6 weeks, I think, of pain, but then they've expanded there, and we're now back to the normal times of 3 weeks for an authority to proceed. 3 days for an authority to proceed, 3 days for the authority to exchange, and I think it's 24 hours, 48 hours for the confirmation to the developer. So they're back on track in terms of where they are, where they need to be, which is great news.
Yeah, that was quite a painful few months.
I think that's it, Dave.
That was a painful few months. I remember a lot of clients phoning up, saying, what's going on? And it was out of our hands. Just on that topic, obviously the developers that you deal with have exchange deadlines. They often try and ask people to exchange within 28 days of signing that reservation form. How have you found the developers acting towards that? Are they being more lenient? Are they extending those timeframes? How's that happened?
Yeah, they have. Yeah, they're not announcing that they're extending it. And I think if you're upfront and honest with your developer who you're buying from, if you're upfront and honest with everybody that I've dealt with, we've kept the developer informed all the way along. So long as the buyer is doing everything they can do to get to that 28 days, if a third party is holding it up, whether that's Help to Buy, whether that's the mortgage, whether that's the survey, that is out of the hands of the developer. So it would be a pretty mean developer to pull the papers on that, which, and as I say, because we've kept the developer informed and they know what's been going on, they've all been fairly lenient. And I think that's pretty much broad brush across the whole spectrum of developers, is that if you're seen to be doing what you can do, they will be tolerant to a level.
Yeah.
It's when you don't do, when you get to 28 days. Yeah. I think it's, if you haven't put your mortgage application in within 28 days, if you haven't instructed a solicitor within 28 days, alarm bells start ringing about how keen are they as a buyer. So, but it's a lot of it is communication. If you communicate with your agent who you're buying through, if you communicate with the developer, then I think you're fine. You should be fine.
That's good.
But I think that's it, Dave.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you very much.
Yeah. No, thanks very much. Thanks to Amit, Maureen, and Paul. Great questions. As I say, we're always on the line. If you want to give us a buzz, if you want information on Help to Buy, if you want information on mortgages, you can speak to either myself or Dave. But thanks for joining on, Dave. Thanks again. No doubt we'll be speaking again shortly about other clients, and we'll catch up shortly.
Yeah, good chatting to you all. Thank you.
Cheers, bud. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Cheers, mate. Bye-bye.